everybody, welcome back to Chortlecast. I'm one of your hosts, Jake, and with me, as always,
just say my name.
the Deadpan Man, the Stream King, the Far Cry Guy, the Garbage Wizard, the King of Thieves, the Man Who May Cry Devil, Star Wars Big Boy, the Kingpin of Hookers, and L'Assassin, Steven. Hey, buddy, how are you?
Hey, generic banter that we haven't already had twice.
Everybody, look, we've done this intro at least 3 times now, so we apologize.
Yeah.
We had some great ones in there, but power went out. Then I forgot my mic was muted. Lots of problems.
You get the trash.
You get the trash version, and we apologize. This is Chortlecast, the official podcast of Chortle Games, where we talk about video games, TV shows, movies, anime, whatever the heck we want to talk about. We got a great show for you. I've done this 3 times. We've got a great show for you this week. We're going to talk about Outriders, the newest live stream that they talked about. We're going to talk about the Pyromancer, all that good stuff. We're going to have a great discussion. It's going to be great. But we are also going to have an open... I've done this 3 times. I'm just like, I'm blowing through it now.
This is the most... Yeah, I guess we're talking about this, and we'll talk about this too, and then there's this, and then this... Okay, let's
I've
go.
literally done this 3 times. I'm just trying to get it back where we were. We're going to have an open discussion about Last of Us Part 2. Go into story spoilers, talk all about what I thought about the story, all that good stuff. We're going to have a nice discussion. There will be spoilers. We're going to make sure we know or let you know when that's happening. So be on the lookout for that. I'm also going to talk about a little indie game I played called Yes, Your Grace on Switch. And then an anime series I've been watching on Netflix called BNA or Brand New Animal. And then Steven is going to talk a little bit about this game called Outward. We talked a little bit about it last podcast, but Steven's gotten a lot more time with it for this one, so we'll go deep into that. But before we do that, it's a new month, everybody. 4th of July has passed. We've celebrated America's birth, so it's time for the next Forward Compatible. Forward Compatible is our review series that we do on the channel, where we take a game we haven't played in at least 5 years, and we see if it's forward compatible with the gamer we are today. So the winner... we put this all to a vote for a Ubisoft game, and the winner was Watch Dogs. So Steven is going to be doing a full playthrough or a replay through of Watch Dogs. We're going to be live streaming that all week long. It's going to start actually probably right after, not right
tonight,
after this podcast, but tonight.
It should start tonight, yeah.
Monday around 7 o'clock-ish. So you can look forward to that, but it'll be going on all week long, all month long. Playing through that game, and then so you can jump in, you can watch, you can kind of see Steven's live thoughts and reactions to replaying the game. But
and
then
you could help me review it too.
You can. If you have thoughts, we want to hear your thoughts in the chat and all that stuff. But anyway, we're going to be doing all that, and then at the end, there will be a review that we do. But before all of that, we're going to do a preview where we kind of get a base level of what do they call it in science? I always blank on this.
Control.
The control. We're going to get a control, if you will, where we just kind of, before Steven and I touch the game again, we're just going to kind of have a discussion of what we remember. What did we remember liking about it? What did we remember hating about it? And then kind of predicting what we think and what we're expecting out of the game. So that'll actually be launching right after this podcast. So look forward to that coming up right after this. So, and then one other thing, next week is the Ubisoft Forward live stream, which is kind of their E3 event, E3 in quotes. We're going to, for the podcast next week, we're actually going to go live for that event. And we'll probably go live about an hour before. And we're just going to have our normal podcast discussion. We'll talk about any news that we'd have. We'll maybe catch up a little bit. But then as we get closer to the show, we'll actually kind of go into some predictions, and then we'll react to the show live for the podcast. So that'll be live. You can come react and watch with us. And then afterwards, we'll have a full discussion of just kind of what we just witnessed, what we're most excited about, all that good stuff. So that'll be next week's podcast on Sunday, not Monday. So,
this review, this Watch Dogs segment very well could be our big break as a channel, because it's happening during Ubisoft Forward, and it's called Forward Compatible. We were here first.
Ooh.
Okay? We were here first. And so now in all the tags, we need to put like Ubisoft Forward, Ubisoft. We need to use those tags, cast our little YouTube tag magic to to make it big, and then everyone's gonna hate it, and then I'm gonna become a pariah on the internet, and I'm gonna get sad, and because everyone's gonna disagree,
Yeah.
Can't wait.
I've got to dial this back for a second because something really funny just happened, and I want to point it out. If you're an audio listener, I'll just walk you through what just happened here. So Steven said, we got to cast our little tag magic. And my brain cast I did like a little fishing like motion. Like I'm casting a rod or casting a hook. We're going to reel him in.
Now you're speaking my language.
Steven was talking about magic. I'm over here fishing. So I don't know how that's going to all come together, but there you go. We've done this 3 times already, so here we go. Let's talk about Outriders.
Trying to throw in the variables where they can, so it's not just, oh yeah, that's a good point that you made for the second time, Jake. Trying to throw you off the scent a little bit. Let's talk Outriders.
Let's talk Outriders, Steven. So, if they don't know what Outriders is, kind of just quickly, what is Outriders?
I can't vamp as much as I did the first time. Basically, Outriders is like if Destiny or Anthem and Borderlands had a baby. And then I'm using this again. It's not even a good analogy, but I'm using it. And then Borderlands, they're coddling little Outriders baby, and Borderlands looks up at Destiny / Anthem and says, he has your eyes. And then Destiny / Anthem looks down at Borderlands and goes, he has your everything else. That's basically what Outriders is. Oh, it's not even good. That was such a waste of time. That helped no one. Basically, Outriders is a third-person, class-based co-op shooter that looks like a games-as-service MMO light on the surface, because it's like you shoot the guns, you got the loot that increases your gears, all that jazz, and there are different skills like your L1, R1, L2, R1, L1, all that stuff. You got all the different skills.
But it's way more story-focused.
It's way more story-focused, and it is not meant to be like, okay, I've beaten the game. Now I'm actually playing the game. It is all about the campaign. The campaign is said to be 20 hours long, roughly, with twice that long, maybe a little bit longer even, if you do all of the content. So they have been doing these monthly broadcasts that I think they've been calling the Outriders broadcast. The first one, they talked about the Trickster, which is the class that Jake's going to play. They manipulate a little bit of time, a lot of bit of space. They can teleport in, do a lot of like cool stuff with time, and then they can teleport out, and then they've basically killed everybody. And they also talked about like just generally gameplay in Outriders, what it is, and how it's different from Destiny or Anthem. But they did the second broadcast this week, and I didn't get to watch it till like Thursday night at midnight, something like that. The day it came out, I watched it that late that evening, and I immediately texted Jake being like, hey, here's the highlights of the broadcast. And so to talk about the broadcast, rather than just trying to go point by point with the actual broadcast, I'm just going to talk through these bullet points, and Jake can ask me questions as I go. So for starters, the game will feature an hour and a half of cutscenes that feature your character specifically and all of their customization, as well as 2 additional hours of other cutscenes that are story and world and all that kind of stuff. So basically what that means, like Destiny, for example, when you start a mission on Destiny and your guy's walking up, maybe he has his helmet on, maybe he doesn't. Your ghost does all the talking and you're reacting to the characters, but your guy is there in his gear. Outriders will have an hour and a half of that, with characters customization will be there. But also they did say in the past, and I don't know if this is all cutscenes or just some will, some won't, but co-op partners will also appear in those cutscenes to an extent, which nice. I'm really excited about. I love that because it makes the experience feel more like we are playing through this game together rather than, hi, I'm the invisible partner over here. So that's good news. That is them basically saying like, this game is about its story. It is a campaign-focused game, just like Borderlands. Borderlands basically has its campaign, and that's it. But at the same time, you play Borderlands multiple times. Good Lord, freaking Austin. Like, Austin, if you're here, how many times have you played through the Borderlands 2 and Borderlands 3 campaigns? Just spitball me your best estimate. Hopefully this game will be like that, to where the story is good, the campaign is fun, but like you want to go back and play more just because the gameplay was so fun. And there will be gear. Borderlands, for example, you have the guns and the relics and stuff, but in this, it is more Destiny style in the gear, to where you do weapons and armor. So there will be more building in that. There will be side quests, and the map will work similar to Borderlands. So what I meant by that, side quests, self-explanatory, but the way those will work is you've got your hubs, and then you've got the different areas. So it's not like Division. Let's use that as an example, where you have the White House as your hub, and then you just have all of DC. In this, it's more like a linear map path, to where you have this camp hub right here, and then you've got all this space here that you can leave and go into from the camp, but that camp has a definitive entry and exit. And that exit either leads to the next area or the next hub, stuff like that. But you can go back and explore those areas. And that's where side quests come in. I feel like I nailed that explanation a little bit better than I did the second time, or the first time. I've lost track. I felt better about it. Did it make more sense?
I felt pretty good about it. So
okay, great. There will be monster hunts. Now what that means is they basically were just like, there will be monster hunts, but more on that at a later time. They showed the character, this group's Outrider. I'm struggling so much with words today. The player went up to like a monster skeleton, and they had like a bounty, and they're like, okay, let's go hunt it. So allegedly there are going to be these big creatures that you can hunt as a side quest, which I think is a really cool addition, because they can really cool. Yeah, because like with Destiny, for example, they don't really prioritize their enemy types, and I feel like they were creative to a point, to where like the Vex are really interesting, the Hive are really interesting, and the Cabal aren't. But like it stops there. But I feel like with Outriders, we may get some really interesting creatures. To where it's less of like, oh, I'm hunting a captain of this enemy faction. So that could be cool. Guess what, Jake?
What?
We're in completely new territory for today's podcast.
We finally made it. We're back to where we were before the power went off.
We're here.
So here we go. Knock on something.
Knock on everything, except for whatever's plugging in your computer. Your truck and crew will go through the story with you, acting as a little, quote, RPG village containing various vendors and stuff. The truck is customizable. So what that means is, you know how you had your crew in Anthem? And your whatever the thing was called that you were with them on? Think that, but as an actual mechanic, and not just like, like, hey, this is your crew. This little outpost thing means absolutely nothing. In this, the truck will hold all of the side characters, but they'll also have a purpose. Like your driver is like an old war buddy of yours. Before you went and got your abilities, I think you like went into cryostasis or something, and when you came out, you had the powers, but years had passed or something. He didn't go, so he's aged. That's my understanding, kind of. But so he is where you go to like customize the truck. There's a girl that comes with you that was basically forced on your group by a allied faction. Like she didn't want to go, and she's very public about it. But she's your gun vendor. So all of them have story purpose as well as mechanic purpose. And what I saw of the characters, I liked. They seemed like better characters than what we get in games like this. Like again, kind of more of a Borderlands thing, because the side characters in Borderlands have usually been pretty great.
Right.
That's more of a similarity there. So the truck is customizable. You can make it look different, stuff like that. But you can't drive it. One, it's literally just a mobile outpost. And two, there's no combat mechanics there. It's literally just like a mobile base. I'm excited about this one. The score will be composed, and I didn't expect to have to read this in a podcast where I actually have to show my work. The score will be done by the guy who did, and I'm going to find his name here, the guy who did Dragon's Dogma, Fallout 3 and New Vegas, Crisis, and a few of the Lord of the Rings games.
Dang.
So pretty good.
It's a pretty good resume there.
Pretty good resume. I'm just going to look up Fallout 3 music. That was a stupid idea. Because it's like, here's those old timey songs that played on Fallout 3. Hold on. Do you have any questions while I'm looking this up? Because I want to credit the guy.
I don't think I mentioned this when you were just reviewing it, but I thought it was weird that they mentioned the time of like there's an hour and a half of your character in cutscene, and as we discussed the first time we recorded this, it's just really just kind of their way of saying like, but no, we're focusing on story, like, you know.
Yeah, because with Destiny and Division, it's a lot of like there's story, but it's much more of a
gameplay.
It's the gameplay. You are here to get through the story, then make builds and run and get all the gear that you want, and then we'll sprinkle some story in. Outriders is just like we have a story to tell that is X long,
right?
And it's all gonna be here. And so yeah, Einon Zur, like something INONZUR. I really like what I heard from the broadcast. It was good music. And I mean, he's got, like he said, a really good resume. So I'm excited. That's good news. I love hearing about composers, and I love that they're talking about it.
Right.
Because good music can really make a game. And so I said this in the first attempt of this recording, but I love that they're answering these niche questions that you wouldn't expect.
Right.
Because like with other games, they would just be like, well, most other games would just be like, here's co-op, here's if there's PvP, here's how long the game will be, and there will be more DLC and all that kind of stuff. But they're getting in the weeds. They're just like, hey, co-op partners appear in cutscenes. Hey, here's the guy who's doing the music. We're really excited about it. Like all that kind of stuff. And I appreciate that because I'm getting a good idea of like, oh, this is what you're going for. By that, because they acknowledge that they need to do that because it was confusing when they did that initial announcement. So after they talked through all that kind of stuff, they talked about Pyromancer. So there are 4 classes in the game, and by the look of it, it's going to be less. Basically, when you pick your class, it seems like you're stuck. Like your class is bound to your character, and I really like that. I personally am not a fan of just being like, well, I guess I'll be a pyromancer today because I have to do this challenge over here that says deal fire damage as a pyromancer. No, I don't like that because I'm one of those people that I enjoy consequence in games to where like I can't just rearrange things to fit what the game tells me I need, because that means that the game developer can't basically force me to do things that I don't want to. The game has to bend around me, not the other way around. And I like that. So that's how it seems. Each class will have 3 skill trees that have branches. So it's kind of like the path going left. You've got a point here, and then it branches off into 2 points, and you can pick one of them, and then it goes back down to 1, stuff like that. So there will be a sense of my pyromancer plays different from your pyromancer. So we only know about 3 of the classes. Trickster we talked about last month. Pyromancer they talked about here, and I'm about to get into it. Devastator is next month. And the 4th one, we don't know what it is. I am crossing my fingers so hard for an ice character because I think that would be super cool. But if the fourth class doesn't interest me, here's my segue. I will probably be playing Pyromancer.
That good, huh?
Not necessarily. Like, it's definitely a bit of a bend for me playstyle wise. But I'm just gonna read this and we'll talk about it after I read through it. Pyromancer was the spotlight, described as mid-range AoE damage dealer. They heal on death of targets affected by skills. They seem to be really good crowd control. They will have access to an auto revive in one of their skill trees. And we'll stop there. So basically, the Pyromancer is the one that hits the most people at a time. They can combo a lot of AoE damage, but also they act as crowd control, which I thought was a cool way to do fire that you normally don't see. Because that's why I was just kind of like, I'm not interested in the Pyromancer, because I just thought a lot of burn damage, all that stuff, which it does. But it also has this ability that they showed off called Ash, where in an area around them, they like hit the ground and then everything just turns to like black dust. Like it doesn't dust. I guess statue is more a better way to put it. But enemies within that area turn to an ash and they're stunned. They're stuck in that state. So, and also burn, which a lot of their skills, if not all of them do, interrupts. So if you see an enemy that like let's say they have a hammer and they're just about to like come down on somebody,
they're winding up.
Yeah. If they're winding up, you can burn them and then you stop that from happening. So they're really good at controlling the battlefield. And I like that concept because in this game, you're going to see a lot less of how I play Division, which is I'm the healer, I'm the support, all that stuff. Even less so than Destiny in this game. You're definitely, which again, gives it more of that Borderlands kind of feel because you have some of that in Borderlands, but really not a lot. So there is still that teamwork and that helping each other, but less of like, let me stand back and heal you, and more of like, in 3 seconds, I'm going to use Ash and I'm going to create an opening, Devastator, get on it. Like go do a big move, stuff like that. And so it's more teamwork tactics rather than teamwork like roles, I guess is a better way to put it. But where was I going with that? Oh yeah, healing. I mentioned this in that little bit. Trickster, I think, gets healing by doing damage up close or something, or doing melee damage. Pyromancer gets healing for the death of an enemy affected by burn or one of their skills. So they leech life, kind of. And that's something about this game that means, no healer. Every form of healing comes from aggression in this game, which is going to be different for me. But I'm excited about it because it just seems like it'll be a fun game to play with friends. Like, it just seems like it'll be really cool. Brody loves games like this where it is not afraid to just make you feel powerful. And that seems like this game is going to do that, where it's not about like limiting what you can do, because there is no PvP, which is a huge bonus for me. They have no intention of bringing PvP. And I think that actually was my next note. They have no intention to provide it. They wanted to focus on making as good of a single player campaign as they could. And that means they will not hold you back. A big problem with Division, for example, is that the player doesn't too often get to feel super powerful because they're balancing that alongside Dark Zone. Destiny does a better job of walking that tightrope. But the fact that it's not even going to be a factor here is good news. Gear can affect how skills behave. They didn't talk about that much, but I guess that means things like make a burn last longer, make a cooldown go quicker, or even adding different effects. Like, I assume there's going to be legendary gear that makes it to where like maybe like there's this ability where you can ignite one enemy. It's an ability where like you can spear an enemy with like a fire pole or something from the ground, and then when they die, they explode.
Ooh, okay.
So maybe a legendary piece of gear, and I'm just speculating here, but the way they made it sound is that gear could affect skills in certain ways. Like maybe there's one that makes it where you can hit 2 people instead of 1 with that.
That would be cool.
I don't know, but
or your normal stuff where like you have 2 charges of that.
Yes, and, something like that maybe. Yeah. Main campaign. This is the last thing. Main campaign is estimated at 25 to 30 hours, 2 to 3 times that long with side content.
That's awesome. Just so just the right amount.
I think so. And they made it sound like they're not going to add on to this game. But who knows? I would personally, if this game ends up being fun enough, I would love to see them do like a story expansion. Nothing that is like, buy this if you want to keep playing the game, but something that's like, hey, if you want more story, here's a new cluster of areas and maybe a new activity to do in those areas, like a horde mode, you know, like every game does. But something like that, just to give us more of it.
Playing, yeah, that would be great.
But I do really appreciate how this game does sound like. It sounds like a game that would have existed a longer time ago, like during, and I say this about a bunch of games, but it really does. It sounds like it would have existed, you know, like when Borderlands 2 when it was coming out. But it's new gen, so that's kind of the problem. And I'm going into so much detail and reiterating this is not Destiny because that's its biggest turnoff right now. People are writing this game off completely because they're just like, oh, it's just another Destiny. And that's just not for those people. But it's tragic because this game very well could be for those people. But because we're in a time to where you see a co-op shooter that has the R1, L1 abilities, you automatically say, oh, Destiny. And that's not what this is. So like if you're on the fence, if you have not really looked into Outriders, do it. They are putting a lot of thought into this game. I don't know if it'll be good. I'm really hoping that it will be, but every single time I hear more about this game, I get more excited. So I would recommend giving it a look. They've done 2 broadcasts. They're about 30 minutes each. Really cool stuff. So check it out.
Yeah, that's to wrap this up. Every time I hear more about it, I get really, really excited, but I'm terrified it's going to go the way of Anthem because to me, and I don't know, I know you've made a lot of comparisons to Borderlands, but I feel like a lot of what they're saying now, and I think they're saying it better than EA did, but a lot of what they're saying is similar to what EA was saying about Anthem. And so I think they're doing a better job and they're communicating more clearly, and hopefully it won't go that route. But I'm a little terrified that it might. That's my only concern at this point.
But that's the big difference. Like that's my concern as well. But like I said, I think in the text, that was the last thing I said was this looks like what Anthem should have been. We're seeing more of like implementation of what Anthem should have implemented. With Anthem, it was not necessarily a lot of talk, but early on it was the way they spoke where it was just like, oh, this sounds awesome. But the closer they got to time, I really feel like EA pressured them into making them a Destiny cash cow. And so development shifted less from this game that, you know, goes from point A to B and that's it. See in the next one or see in the expansion what it should have been. And EA was pressuring them more into being like, no, this is a game as service. That's what we need. We need something that we can monetize. And so, I still love Anthem. It just got completely shafted. It could have been so good and it just wasn't. But this game sounds like, you know, it's not EA for one, but they've also been showing their work.
Right.
So that makes me feel a little more confident that won't happen. But I've been burned quite a bit by the industry. So we'll see. Which is why you should be like, if you're interested in Outriders, even if you are saying like right now, I'm buying this day one, do your research. Make sure that you're getting what you expect.
Right.
And that goes for everybody.
All right, let's do a little bit of catch up. That was a good chunk of news. Good little news bit there. So let's talk Last of Us. Let's get that elephant out of the room. So
get that elephant out of here.
Get that elephant. We'll let the elephant in here. We're gonna talk about Last of Us. We're gonna talk about the main campaign story. So if you don't want any spoilers, you know, go ahead and drop off from here.
Should we do this first then, or should we do this last?
We can do it last.
Okay. Come back.
I'm sorry.
It's safe.
Well, then here, I'll talk about Yes, Your Grace. That was my indie game that I played this week on the Switch. very fun little indie game. I had mentioned it a long time ago because I got the release dates. There was a release date for PC on coming to Steam,
Yeah.
and then Switch was very much delayed. So it finally came out. I believe it came out last Friday. I played it after I finally beat Last of Us, and it's good. It's fine. It's a kingdom management game. So you sit on the throne literally as the king, and you listen to people come and ask you for different things. So like one of the best ones is Your Grace. I've brought you something I think that will interest you. It's a magical cock, is what they say, and it's a chicken, a rooster, and it supposedly will tell you if someone is lying. And so I bought it, and it only crowed one time at a really random statement. So I was like, crap, I don't know if I should ever trust that person again, but I helped them, so it was whatever. Um, they kind of pitched the game as like normal games that give you choices are easy, and those choices never really matter, but like this game, we wanted to make a game that'll the choices will matter. And like at the beginning of the game when you start, it's like, yes, Your Grace is a game about tough choices. You won't be able to do everything you want to do, blah 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 blah. And so yeah, I played that, and I was expecting to kind of have to make really difficult choices. And whenever I play these kind of games, especially when I'm like the king and I got a bunch of funds, and I'm trying to manage everything, I always try to help people and try to do the kind thing. And even normally when you play games like that, like there comes a point where it's just like, nope, you can't keep doing all this. You're gonna get bit. But this game very much, it rewarded you for being good, like for being a good king. But I did have a lot of moments where I had to just turn somebody down and say, sorry, I can't do this or whatever. But the thing I didn't like about it was ultimately like the choices that I say really matter, like the bigger choices. I didn't feel like you really had much choice. Like one of the very first things, like within the first 30 minutes, you start off with 3 daughters, and your oldest daughter, and you're about to go to war with this barbarian tribe who's coming over the mountains, who you promised your daughter to their leader at some point. So he's coming with an army to claim that or whatever. And so my immediate response was, well, like, how do we know they're that bad? Like, it might be okay. She might actually like this guy. Like, let's just at least have a conversation before we just start killing, like that was the response I wanted to try and take. But like the first 30 minutes, it is a pretty strict deal. Basically another king comes and he's like, yo, what up? I got 3,000 soldiers. You'll definitely, wipe the floor with these guys if you got that many.
Yo, what it up? Me, King. I got 3,000 soldiers. Check out my subscribers.
Check out my subs. That king at YouTube. Anyway, his one condition though is that he wants your daughter to marry his son. And so immediately I was like, no, I don't. That's not what I want to do. But I didn't have a choice. It was just like, okay, I guess we'll make that happen. And like, there's some like dialogue choices that don't really matter. It's just kind of like what your attitude about it is. But either way, that happens, right? And so there's a lot of other stuff that goes on, and I won't go into it. But like the choices like that, I felt like it really kind of restricted you a little bit more than I wish it had. So it's a really short campaign. I mean, I beat it in probably 2 days or so. It's maybe 20 hours total. Not even that. Maybe 15. So, but the managing of the kingdom was really satisfying, which I enjoyed. Like I said, I just wish I had a little bit more freedom with it. But the only other thing I have to talk about, other than Last of Us, which I'll talk a lot about, but I'll let you talk about Outward first, Steven. I'll talk about Brand New Animal. Now, Steven, you're a big anime guy. I think you would love Brand New Animal. It's a Netflix original anime series. It's done by Trigger, who is a really big name in anime. They've done some awesome stuff. Little Witch Academy is another one that they've done that's really good. Brody, I've
been burned by Netflix anime before. You understand? So.
See, I don't think it is a Netflix anime original or whatever, but I feel like they just kind of bought it. You know what I mean?
Did they have anything to do with Devilman Crybaby?
The people who Trigger, no.
Yes.
No. Trigger did not do Devilman Crybaby.
Okay.
Devil May Cry Baby. Anyway, no, they did not do that. It's a really, really fun show. The basic premise is we're in a world where there are humans and there are beastmen, and beastmen can turn into humanoid animals. So like the main character is a tanuki. She's this girl, and the kind of the twist, and this isn't spoilers because you find this out in the first episode, but the kind of twist with her is that she's lived her whole life as a human, but then one day she suddenly changed into a beastman. So like most people grow up knowing they're a beastman, but she just out of nowhere became a beastman. So anyway, it's a really fun show. She's kind of the main character. It's a girl. Her name is like, it's not Mikasa. That's not right. But Michiru. Michiru is how you say her name.
The main character's name is Mikasa. Her best friend is Tsukasa.
I hate you. Anyway, Michiru. And then the thing that something that's really cool. So there's this other guy that she meets up with who's kind of like a detective / like just kind of protector of the Beastman city. So humans hate Beastmen, right? There's this whole, I don't know if racial is the right term, but like, there's this whole like segregation and speciesist. Yeah. It reminds me a lot of crap. I want to say Zootopia. Thank you. It's Zootopia. Reminds me a lot of Zootopia. Anyway, there's this character. He's kind of a detective, like Batman almost, but protector of Anima City, which is the animal city. And I can't think of his name, but he's a wolf, and he's really, really cool. And there's some other stuff going on with him too that's fun that you find out. But anyway, it's just a really, really fun show, and like anime has this tendency to be a little like sexual in certain moments, or I don't know. And I don't think this has nearly. I really don't think it has any. But I could be so just not tone deaf, but like. I'm so numb to that now because I've watched so much anime, but I really don't think it has that much. Like I've almost suggested to Brody and Alexandra that they could watch it with Ellie, which is their baby. But I don't recommend that, Brody, because there is an episode that gets really, really violent. Like I'm talking crazy violent, and so don't watch it with your kids. But it's a fun show. So anyway, yeah, I really, really highly recommend it. It's really, really good.
So I'll look it up, but I'm really just I found this on the Nintendo eShop.
What?
I have to share this game description, Jake.
I thought you were reacting to what I just talked about.
No, that sounds fine.
Explain it well.
No, that sounds fine. I found this game on the eShop. And like the way I do eShop shopping is that I see the picture and I'm just like, if the picture looks like something that I might like, I click on the game and I'm like, let's see what this is about. This game looked like Final Fantasy Tactics.
Uh-huh.
Like from the picture. Didn't look at the name, just looked at the picture. So I clicked on it. I'm going to read this to you before I start talking about Outward.
Okay.
An action RPG about getting beaten down, wrapped up, hip checked, blood sucked, and straight up eaten by cute female monsters. Shacked up in an empty house in the first... I'm going to skip over that. I'll go to the features. The main character is basically an unemployed hobo. You can select their gender. All kinds of weapons are at your disposal. Swords, axes, claws, staves, and bows and arrows. They also break down for, no reason. Somehow make do with the crappy weapons and tools of your choice and use them to take down your enemies. Take your pick from a wide variety of, quote, swimwear, including swimwear actually used for swimming, swimwear that's just for show, etc. Most of the monsters are soft, cute, sadistic girls. You can totally touch their butts. So Outward is a game that came out...
That was way too hard of a turn. I have whiplash right now. So Outward, let me talk about Outward. Well, I'm not even going to ask. I want to know the name just to laugh at the name, but I don't want to know the name because
it's like Hakaniwa Explorer Plus.
Wow.
Any game that has plus in it,
just stop. Just walk away. Mm-hmm.
Be on your guard.
Wow. Okay. Outward.
So
Steven.
Outward.
Talk about Outward.
Outward is an RPG that came out last year, but I did not actually get it till the Steam summer sale started. I think last week, the week before that. It is an RPG that basically makes you no one. You start off the game as just some Yahoo from a village, basically. You don't have magic. You have no skills. And you have to. There are survival mechanics. So hunger, thirst.
Think 7 Days to Die mixed with Skyrim a little bit.
Yeah. But really, it emanates such Fable energy for me.
Mm-hmm.
But like not the tone, just playing it. And maybe it's the nostalgia aspect because I played a good bit of Fable back in the day, but it reminds me of Fable for some reason, even though it doesn't really play like Fable. But so in Outward, basically the way the game goes is you start off the game in the main area. The story almost immediately branches off one of three ways based on a faction that you can join.
Mm-hmm.
You either go to the marshes, to the forest, or to the desert. And in Outward, there is no fast travel. There is no indicator on the map of where you are. There is no indicator on the map that says the quest is here. There's a quest journal, thank God. But all those other things are, like in the first area, there's this huge mountain. That is basically how you navigate that first area is, all right, where am I? Where's that mountain? Okay, there's the mountain. If the mountain's there, where's the water? The water's there. I must be here. That's how you do it in the first area. But there was something nostalgic about playing it, where like the gameplay is fine. The melee combat has nuance to it a little bit to where like it's got a little bit of Dark Souls where you dodge roll and everything, but also like the combos that you can do shift you in certain directions. So you can actually, if you're anticipating an attack from the enemy, you can hit them and then hit again and dodge to the side through your hit. So there actually is some complexity to the combat based on timing and combo system. But the way the skills work is really interesting because there are, I think 9. I'm not looking up much about this game because it's definitely meant to be experienced that way. Mm-hmm. I think there are like 9 skill trees. So 9 disciplines. Each of those has one trainer. Like in the first town, there is a skill trainer for Spellblade. Someone that can augment their melee weapons with an element. Through magic. Mm-hmm. That is the only place you learn the Spellblade skill tree. You can learn tier 1 abilities for any tree, but to get to above that, you have to purchase the tier 2 breakthrough skill, of which you can only get 3. So you're technically creating your class by specializing into 3 skill trees. For example, what I'm doing on console, and Jake will be able to see this when we finally play it. Mm-hmm. I'm doing Spellblade. I'm going to try to do a monk and then a, what do they call it? A shaman, like a shaman of the winds. Basically, I'm going to make an ice magic focused monk. So I can use like a chakram. I can use a staff really well. And I can use wind magic. So basically, like the thing I wanted to talk about, because I did this a lot this week, mm-hmm. is the magic. The magic is really impressive, but it's really confusing. You don't have any mana at the start. You have to go to that huge mountain, pass a trial, and then you have mana. But to have mana, you have to sacrifice health and stamina to get more mana. As in max mana, not to regenerate your mana. So I sacrificed, I think, 30 health and stamina to get more mana. And that gave me a pretty good bit. So now I can do magic. But that's permanent, which is kind of a big deal. Yeah. So I got my favorite skill set that I've found so far is rune magic. And this is the one I wanted to talk about that can explain what they mean through magic being ritualistic and deliberate, I think is how they describe it. Rune magic has 4 skills: blue rune, green rune, purple rune, orange rune. They do nothing by themselves. And I talked to the trainer. He's at Berg, which is the city in the forest area. And he was just like, yeah, you have to combine the runes to make spells. For example, orange rune, purple rune, which I think the runes mean orange is offense and purple is self. I think that's what they represent. So that means you create a means for you to attack, which creates a sword in your hand. It's like a spectral blade that has set stats, but they're pretty good stats. So that's the first spell that I learned for that, because I just went ahead and unlocked every single rune because I had a crap ton of silver. So from that point on, and this is just an example of like how Outward should be experienced and how it can be experienced. I guess can and should. I got those runes and I hadn't looked up anything about rune magic. I just knew that it was there and that it existed. And I was trying to see what all the different magics were. So immediately I was like, this is so cool. I need to see what all my combinations I can do are. So I went to my house that I had just purchased because I had a crap ton of silver. I got some supplies to go on a brief adventure because you need to make sure you have water, food, shelter, a means of starting a fire, which, by the way, if you create a campfire, you can light it with magic. You can use there's a spark spell, which is the most basic form of magic. It does this little explosion in front of you, but it can be combined to make other spells. But if you use that spell by itself, it lights a campfire. So if you find yourself in the cold without a flint and steel, you can just start your fire, which I thought was a really cool detail.
That is cool.
So I got the supplies that I needed and went to a lake, because in this game, eating fish regenerates health and mana. But also seaweed, which can appear near any bodies of water, can be combined with water to make a tea that restores your maximum mana, because resting, there's a constant battle between health and stamina and magic. Because if you sleep, you restore your physical body, but you're also partially severing your mind's tie to the ley line. So your maximum mana decreases. And the only way to increase it is through drinking tea or something like that. It's a really interesting concept. I hadn't heard of that being done before. But I spent all this time next to this lake just practicing runes, just making like, okay, does green, orange do anything like that? And I spent an entire day of game time doing that, taking breaks in between so that my mana could recharge without me using my potions. I would just let it recharge through the fish, and I'd do some inventory management while I did that. But I spent an entire day of in-game time learning this skill set to, like, you know, when you go up to a skill vendor in most games, it's just like, I know this ability now, but just the idea that like I knew the rune, but I actually had to go and learn how to apply these runes to make skills. And so I ended up, yeah, it really is. It was so neat. I don't see enough of that. So I learned like a spectral lantern, which was green, blue, which I don't remember what those runes represent.
It reminds me a lot of Magicka or Magicka 2, which is like this kind of weird top-down magic casting game. But what was cool about it is you have a magic staff and you've got all these different magic elements like fire, ice, water, wind, like whatever, the poison, life, death, like whatever.
Yeah.
But there's 2 trees, right? And you can combine whatever two types of magic together, and they would mix and form some sort of, or I think it was spell, like you could put in commands for spells, and like
Yeah.
you kind of could figure out different spells, and you could, like, if you were playing multiplayer, like I could shoot fire at your stream of water magic, and we'd create wherever they joined would create steam, and that would have some sort of effect. So that's what this sounds like a little bit, just kind of that mixing of what you got.
There is a lot of that even outside of just rune magic, because different magic disciplines may have sigils. For example, the shaman has a wind sigil, the monk has the fire and ice sigil, and the hex mage has the blood sigil. But different spells behave with different sigils in different ways. Spark, for example, is a way to fire a blast of magic from that element of the sigil which you're standing on at the enemy. But at the same time, a shaman can reveal souls for some reason. I don't know why they can do that. But if you reveal a soul with a shaman ability, and use a blood sigil, I think this is what I read. You can use another shaman ability called Conjure, which utilizes a soul combined with a blood sigil, and you make a blood turret.
Dang.
So there's a lot of interplay between these different magic disciplines. That's just awesome. Rune magic just happens to be pretty self-contained. But the spells that I learned were like a spectral lantern, which creates like a blue ball of light over my shoulder, so I don't have to have a lantern active. Spectral blade, like a magic trap, and runic protection, which just gives me like a damage mitigation thing. And last night I mastered rune magic. Like I learned all the different skills in the tree. So now, I forgot to mention, to use rune magic as a novice, you have to have a book in hand, like a lexicon. So you can't have a shield or a pistol or a dagger or anything. You have to have that book. I learned the skill that allows me to create runes out of nothing. So I don't need the book anymore.
That's cool.
So now I could be a sword and shield tank and just be like, oh no, what am I going to do? Oh, maybe I'll just draw these symbols in the air and then boom, fireball. But now I learned more complex expansions upon those spells that I already had. So for example, Spectral Blade, I can do another runic combination to turn my one-handed spectral sword into a two-handed spectral greatsword. I can detonate the runic trap remotely. I can heal myself with the runic protection, and I can make it to where my little spectral light shoots a lightning bolt. So it's like a form of offensive magic as well. I freaking love that concept though, of just because magic, I love magic in games, but I think I've gotten so spoiled by magic that's just like fireball, ice storm, like all that, like just throwing all these abilities out in a fast pace, and I love that.
Able to customize them, stuff.
Right. And I love the fast paced magic kind of play style, but with this game's slower pace, it's so cool creating magic and seeing it as more of a process or ritual, like being like, I kill somebody over here and then I see more enemies coming over here, and I'm just like, okay, I don't have a lot of time. Then I take a bloodstone, which I have to create through components. I drop it on the ground. It's almost like alchemy from Full Metal Alchemist.
Yeah.
Because you create like a circle, like a transmutation circle, and then I could reveal the soul of the guy next to me that I just killed, take his soul and combine it with this rune sigil to make a blood turret. Like just take those different steps to create powerful spells. That is so cool. Like I want more of that. But I really love it. I think you'll really like it. It definitely has a curve to it.
Right.
But there's just so there's just such nostalgia, but also like it's that labor of love kind of feel of playing games with Outward, because having to walk everywhere, set up camp, cook your food, bundle up for the cold or strip down for the heat. And like even in just the process of magic, there's something just so cool about it. And so I definitely want us to play it sometime.
Yeah, I definitely want to stream it. I started it, did not get very far at all. But I would like to get more into it. So that's very cool. Very cool. All right. Well, last but not least, let's talk about Last of Us Part 2. So now we're going into spoiler territory. I'm going to talk about my kind of final thoughts on the story, the main story, and just kind of what I thought of it overall. I'll try to be brief because I even in discussing it, I'm assuming if you're listening to this, you've experienced it, and so we're going to talk as if you've played it. But I highly recommend, if you haven't played it, to wait to play it in one go, or not in one go, but like play through it yourself, get the experience, because much like Last of Us 1, you really have to play it to really get the full experience of the story. So we're going to dive into that here. So spoilers, be warned. We'll come out of this going into the wrap. So if you want to skip ahead, just skip to the wrap. So, all right, here we go. Spoilers. So, oh man, Last of Us Part 2 was a wild ride. I'll just talk, Steven. I know you're going to have a lot of thoughts. So let me just word vomit all of my kind of thoughts, and then we can have kind of a discussion more afterwards. But so basically what happens in the story is the game begins. You're in Jackson. The game really begins right after the promise in Last of Us Part 1. And we see this kind of exchange between Joel and Ellie. And then it cuts to kind of where we are today, still in Jackson. Ellie is going on patrol. Kind of through discussions, we know that she and Joel have kind of been through a rough patch, but we don't really know what their situation is. Anyway, we play through some segments, kind of learning how to play, doing all this different stuff. They don't teach you how to shoot by shooting a guy that's trapped on the ground who's begging for you to kill him. They teach you how to shoot by throwing snowballs at kids. So
that's a huge mistake. Huge mistake.
I completely agree.
I can't believe in this apocalyptic world if I'm not learning how to use a gun by mercy killing a man.
Exactly. It was a waste of whatever. No, I'm just kidding. It was great, but it was a lot of fun. Anyway, do all this section. I don't want to be this granular. I'm sorry. That's where I'm at. Basically, as you're doing all this, you suddenly switch to Abby, and you play as Abby for a second. We don't really know who she is. We're just kind of wandering around, but she's looking for somebody. They've tracked somebody down, right? Well, wouldn't you know it, that somebody is Joel. These are some ex-Fireflies. They kill Joel. Now, this is what leaked, right, Steven? This is kind of what was the leak. Was that Joel was going to die.
This was the first part of the leak. I knew all the way to the Ellie Abby stuff.
Gotcha. Well, so Joel died, right? I was not expecting it. You can go watch the live stream when I experienced that live. Was not expecting it, but I'll tell you this. Hearing about the game, all I heard from people who had played it was like, "Oh man, it's violent. Oh man, like it's gonna push you to do some stuff, like whatever." And I was just like, "Oh gosh, I don't know if I want to play it. Like this doesn't sound like something I want to go through with." Well, I tell you what, buddy. When they fucking killed Joel, I was ready to go. I was like, no. I'm finna kill all of you fools. I ain't never gonna forgive you. I'll also say this. I'll just throw this in here. Girlfriend Reviews, they did a review of the game. If you just want a quick and concise of my thoughts, just go watch that, because I 100% agree with everything they said. But anyway, I just quoted a line from their review. That's why I said that. Anyway, Abby kills Joel. I'm mad. I'm ready to go kill all of them. You play through as Ellie, and you're killing all these people. You're going after all these people, trying to find Abby, right? And it's dark. It's dark because you're killing these people. But what I really respect is that Naughty Dog expected you to understand what was happening in the game, right? And what I mean by that, one of the best, or what I think is the prime example of that, is we didn't know at first who Abby was. You assume that they're Fireflies, right? That's the only thing that really makes sense. And I think Naughty Dog expects you to have figured that out. And so that they didn't make that the interesting twist, right? As we're playing, we see these flashbacks of Joel and Ellie together, kind of the years after the promise. And after, I think it was maybe 2 years after the promise, we start to see Ellie, I don't know if suspicious is the right word, but get regretful. And so she actually goes back to that hospital and searches around and figures it out. And that was a huge moment for me because we how it happens is you finally track down one of these people who killed Joel, but you get him alive, right? And you get to talk to her, and actually she gets contaminated, she gets infected, right? So this girl's like dead, right? And Ellie is walking around without a mask, and she's like, "You're the girl," and it's like, of course, she's a Firefly. It all makes sense. And so she's telling you, she's like, "Well, you should understand why we did this. Like, what all he did, and you're expecting." I was expecting Ellie, because at this point we didn't know. I was expecting Ellie to be like, "What are you talking about?" And like this was going to be how she found out. But she just like beats the shit out of this character and is like, "I know, but you still killed him," or something like that. So then it goes to the flashback of when she found out. And like, to me, that was just such a better moment because we knew why these people killed Joel. Like, that wasn't interesting. But what was interesting was that she knew, and she resented Joel for it. And that's what broke their relationship apart. She basically said, like, "I won't leave, but we're done. We're not going to be, we're through." So that was really sad. That was a really emotional thing. But anyway, you play through that, and then eventually you kill everyone but Abby. And you basically, it gets to a point where you find out Dina's pregnant. There's all these other things that are going on. Dina didn't die. That was a whole deal that I wasn't expecting. You're getting ready to go. You're done. You're giving up on the revenge quest because you've had enough. You've had your fill of this monstrosities. Right before you leave, Abby shows up, and she's fixing to kill all of you. And then it rolls back to 3 days later, or 3 days ago. So then you play through the entire story that you just played through, but from Abby's perspective, right? So the whole time I was playing as Ellie, I was just like, man, I ain't ever going to forgive that Abby girl. She killed my man Joel. I'm like, there's nothing you can say that's going to make me feel bad for this character. But then you play through those 3 days as Abby, and I tell you what, I left playing as Abby caring way more about what Abby was doing than what Ellie was doing. Just because basically Abby is a retelling of Joel and Ellie's story, really. Like, if you just want to really boil it down, because she's this hardened killer soldier who learns to find empathy and love by helping a child in this pandemic, or in this apocalypse, end of the world situation. Anyway, I really think hers is what I like about it is the empathy that the game it forces you to experience, but I think you have to have some empathy and have to learn a little bit of empathy to even really get the full experience of that. But anyway, eventually you catch up to that moment where Abby she kills Jesse and is about to confront Ellie. And so you play as Abby fighting Ellie. And Brody and I both, when we played this section, we're both like, if it makes me kill Ellie, I don't know what I'm gonna do. Like, I'm still, because I was very torn at that moment, because it was like, I don't want anything to happen to Ellie, but now I don't really want anything to happen to Abby. Like, I think, yeah, we should just go our separate ways. Let's just call it here or whatever. Anyway, Abby basically has Ellie and Dina dead to rights. But because of Lev, the child that she's helped, the child stops her and says, like, let's just go. Let's leave it. And so Abby just kind of threatens, like, don't let me ever see you again. And so Ellie leaves, and then in Naughty Dog fashion, they have kind of a false end. We see Ellie living happily with Dina in a farmhouse, living their best life. They have a kid. There's all this good stuff. But she's still struggling with Joel and what happened with Joel. So she decides she's gonna leave and go find Abby and finish what she started. And Dina basically tells her, like, I'm not going to be here when you come back. And she says, okay, and goes. So basically threw away this happiness to go kill Abby. Abby and Lev, meanwhile, are looking for the Fireflies, trying to rejoin the Fireflies, get caught up with this group called the Rattlers. Ellie ends up saving them from the Rattlers, only to go and have a fist fight with Abby, where she loses 3 fingers and still doesn't kill her. Which, again, I'm fine with because I was so invested in Abby, and I really was rooting for Abby almost more than I was Ellie. Because I wasn't about, me personally, I wasn't about this revenge story, right? I was when I was there in that moment with Joel. But as we went on, it was kind of like, okay, I can't keep living with this revenge. And Ellie kind of has that same experience. She has one final flashback of, funnily enough, of what one of the, not the first E3 thing we ever saw, but one of the things they showed at E3 of that dance night. They showed up to a point of that scene at E3. Like, this is literally the end of the game. They showed at E3. It's crazy. Anyway, you see the rest of that cutscene. You see Joel defending Ellie from somebody who's being homophobic. And Ellie gets mad at him, whatever. She goes and she just kind of confronts him. And basically she was just like, why did you do this? Like, my life was supposed to mean something, which is something I think I've struggled with in this story the most, especially as I was going through it. But now that I've kind of sat down, like I hated personally that nothing ever came of Ellie being the cure, right? That for me personally, I wanted her to, what I was kind of hoping would happen would be that Abby and Lev would find the Fireflies. Hey, look, we've got a doctor. We just need somebody who can, we just needed some way to cure it. And Abby be like, man, I had the girl dead to rights a while ago. Ellie shows up. And then I was hoping that they would talk and Abby would give her the opportunity to let her life mean something again. And then that be the end of Ellie's story. But we didn't get that. Who knows if we'll ever get that. I digress. Ellie says that, Joel, my life was supposed to have meaning. And he was like, if God would give me a way or a chance to go back in time, I would do it all exactly the same. And Ellie says, I don't know that I can ever forgive you for that, but I'd like to try. And Joel just about cries. I about cry. So basically she had forgiven him that night, but they never got to talk again until he was on his deathbed, right? And really then that he didn't talk. She just said, Joel, you got to get up. Whatever. So anyway, that she never really got that full closure of that forgiveness, but she did forgive him. So anyway, all of that to say, I just explained kind of how I wish the game had ended. But I do think it's a really, really compelling story. I really, really enjoyed the whole process. I know, Stephen, one of your thoughts that you're going to mention here in a second is that it seems like they wanted to tell the story of Abby and Lev, but they just had to kind of throw Joel and Ellie in there to make it a Last of Us game. And I do kind of agree. I almost wish that they had just kind of done a new thing. Here's Abby and Lev, and let's go down this story, because it was just, it was very good. But well, we'll get into some of this in a minute, but I just really like, with Last of Us, we talked a lot about that moment where, all throughout the game, you have this moment where Joel kind of will vault Ellie up to different areas. And part of how Naughty Dog told story through gameplay was there's one part where Ellie's depressed and she doesn't come to you when you do that moment. I've been waiting for that kind of moment with Last of Us Part 2. And there's not like a moment that I can point to, but what I can say is, like, overall, I think they designed the game to force the player to experience the story they were trying to tell. And I'm not explaining this very well, but like when Joel died, I was just as mad as Ellie. You know what I mean? Like, I was fuming in that scene. It like does the whole thing where like everything becomes muted and you just hear a ding, kind of like tension building sound. Like, I felt that so hard. And so I was on board for Ellie's ride. But once I got to Abby, very much in the same sense, they forced me to have empathy and to realize kind of what I had been doing, how, you know, right or wrong isn't necessarily what I'm looking for, but like what the effects of that were and what I was really doing. So I don't know. I just thought it was a really, really good ride, and I highly recommend it. I thought it was a lot of fun. So, and again, you know, we talked about this last week, but like the gameplay was way better. It was beautiful. You know, it was a great experience. So, Steven, I know you got a lot of thoughts, and we don't agree on everything, but what do you want to talk about out of that?
It was definitely bold. I won't take that away from them.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, they were trying to say something, but they were more concerned with how they said it rather than why they were saying it. Because the message of the game is basically, if you're going to seek revenge, dig 2 graves. But that message is completely lost. It becomes more of revenge is bad, but it approaches that in such a ideal way, quote unquote, to where you feel the anger that Ellie feels. But the reason you're able to let go of that anger, and to clarify, I haven't played the game. I just know various things that I've read, a few things that I've seen, and I've compiled all my thoughts, and I understand that's completely biased. Well, that's a completely uninformed way to approach it, but I've been so turned off of just so many levels of execution, and even what I saw when you played, I just didn't like it. But I shouldn't have said that. I lost my train of thought. But the whole Ellie seeking revenge thing, you're on board with it. Yeah, they get that moment where, like with Joel seeing, like where we forget, like the game almost reaches out and touches us. That was Joel when he goes to vault Ellie and she doesn't come, and he looks through us to her. But with Last of Us 2, it just seems like they reached through and they were just like, get mad, and they succeeded at that. But then their means of cooling us off was by seeing Abby's point of view, her perspective. And then we end up playing Ellie and we spare her. Why? Like what part of Ellie's journey gets her to the point that we get at, where we realize that seeking revenge on this person, a person, is much more than just the one bad deed that they did. Ellie doesn't get to that point in her journey because she doesn't see Abby's story. We do. So there is a disconnect in narrative. To me, and I thought of this in literally 5 minutes. But what they should have done, in my opinion, speaking as someone who hasn't played the game, they should have made it to where the story wasn't so A then B, to where you play as Ellie and then you play as Abby. They should have made it to where they sprinkled it in so that they can, if they insisted on making this an Ellie story, like where Ellie is in the game, make it to where you gradually see Abby, you play as her through parts. Sometimes you're just like maybe starting with, oh yeah, I hate this girl, but then you start to see perspective rather than just basically being forced to be her. Because we were forced. Well, I say we, players who played Last of Us 2 were forced to like her. Because if they didn't like her, they didn't play the game. So they were literally stuck at gunpoint to get to this point to where they thought Abby was okay. And they showed us that through all of these situations where, like, we got the whole story of Abby, but if there is supposed to be that connection between character and player, the only person that does have that whole story is Abby. And so we can't expect the characters in the game we're playing to react in the same way we would if we were the characters, because they don't have the story that we do.
Yeah, I understand that. That's definitely a plot hole of it. And I thought about this from because you're mentioning it of, you know, how can Ellie have empathy for Abby in the end when she didn't experience everything that we did. Vice versa, something I think about is that moment when Abby and Ellie fight and you're playing as Abby. Something I've thought about is the reason she doesn't kill Ellie is because Abby doesn't really know what Ellie's done, because the only person she confronted was Tommy. And even when you find out that everyone you know, all your friends, all of Abby's friends, even when you find out they're dead, the first thing she says is, we've got to go find him. We've got to figure out where this guy went. So she thought it was all Tommy, and sure, Tommy played a huge role in it. But even when you get to that moment where she finds Ellie, first she finds Tommy and is basically ready to kill Tommy, and then Ellie walks in, right? And they end up fighting because Ellie's the only one that's like is ready to fight at that point. So even Abby didn't really have that much reason to hate Ellie because she thought it was all Tommy. Now obviously she knew she was an accomplice, but I think that was why it was easier for her to forgive Ellie in that moment, because she didn't really know what we all knew about Ellie's experience. But I totally see your point there of we had gone through this moment of learning empathy, but Ellie hadn't yet, which I guess it's really, if you think about it that way, that makes Ellie's leaving the farm make a little bit more sense, because we learned, ooh, man, thank God they left that, because we knew who Abby was. Ellie still didn't. And you could continue to argue that once she found Lev and Abby trapped and she had to free them, she still didn't know everything we knew. But I think she just kind of learned, because she has a flashback in that fight of her forgiving Joel, and I think she kind of finds her closure in that moment, which, you know, I kind of, and I even said, I think I said this to you when I beat it, Stephen. I was just like, it was really convenient that they show you that moment of her forgiving Joel right then, right? Like, because if I had known, it would have had a whole different feel if you had known that the whole time.
Right. And again, that's them utilizing, I'll say all this and then I'll get to what I think they should have done. Mm-hmm. But that's them utilizing the narrative for the benefit of the player, not attaching the player to the narrative for the benefit of the character, which is what they did with Joel.
Right.
Because the narrative served him. In Last of Us 2, the narrative serves us. We are emotionally manipulated through everything we do, through everything we see, to get the message that they're trying to put across. That is why, like, you could argue that Ellie had that memory of Joel this whole time. She had forgiven him days ago before pursuing Abby. So why'd she just remember that there? Because she needed to remember it there so that we would see it there, so that we can forgive when Ellie does. It's convenient. It's overly convenient. It's the Force. It's the Force. It's the writer saying this happens because it needs to here. So my problem is mainly with inconsistency and lack of focus. They didn't really seem to do what they want to do. Because like if the message is revenge is bad, do what I was saying, make Ellie the protagonist. We see Abby's story from a different perspective sprinkled throughout the game. But make it to where choice is important. Choice is much more important and I know I'm normally one that says, like, give me a story that's intended. Right. Yeah. Tell me the story that's intended rather than giving me the option. That's what makes Assassin's Creed so disappointing as a story right now, because they're just like, yeah, do whatever you want. But here, if you're trying to get the player to understand, to get to a point to where they empathize fully, you put the gun in their hand and you give them the choice to pull the trigger or not. You do that throughout the game to where all of Abby's associates, Metro did this. I forgot about that. Metro Last Light did this to where you get stabbed in the back by two different people. And when you confront them, you were given the choice, and it doesn't make a big fanfare of it. You just have them on the ground, and you can either, one of them can give a gas mask, or you can just leave them there to choke. The other one, you can pull him out of this hallucination or whatever, or you can just leave him. And the moment doesn't affect Artyom, the character. It affects the child that is following us, because our morality is the morality imparting upon the future.
Mm.
That's effective because it suddenly doesn't become about like there's a purpose to my forgiveness. There's a purpose to my thinking, well, Pavel, you really screwed me over. I really want to kill you right now. But there are things that are more important than my bloodlust. And they didn't give the player the choice, which was a huge misstep. Because sure, you can say, oh, they made you feel that anger so much, but they stopped there. Because make it to where Ellie can, where you pull the trigger, you choose whether to spare or kill various people throughout that journey, and then make it all culminate after the story, the sides are both shown, make it culminate where Ellie has the choice to kill Abby. And if she does, there's another level. And that level is an associate of Abby's hunting down Ellie. We play as that associate and we don't get the choice. We kill Ellie because revenge is a cycle. If you indulge in it, then it keeps coming. And if you spare Abby, you let it go.
Right.
You congratulations. Naughty Dog has successfully shown you that revenge isn't the way. But here we're just left with Abby killed Joel. She fulfilled her revenge. She lives happily ever after. Ellie didn't. Ellie didn't kill the object of her revenge. And she is forgetting Joel. She gets the sad ending. So your moral is people who take revenge end up okay. People who don't are ruined. The revenge eats them up even though they chose to not take part. And so that's a lot of why I just, and again, I thought of that method in 5 minutes. Imagine what a good writer, which Last of Us has, we know they do. Imagine what they could have done if they had really taken that concept and shown that they not only want to just try to say that in those moments, but they want to try to say that throughout rather than just telling a story and forcing us to experience it in one intended way. If you want to teach the player something, you make them have the choice because otherwise nothing's learned. It's just shown.
It's just shown.
And so that's a lot of my big complaint. It's not the fact that they killed Joel. And are people really pissed about the fact that Joel died? We knew he was going to die. Everyone said he was going to die. I know it has more to do with like how he died.
Right.
But that isn't really like, I think he deserved more, not necessarily better, but more because he was a bastard.
Right.
But I think he deserved more, but that's not why I dislike this game. It just,
right.
It stumbled a lot and people are giving it a 10 out of 10. It doesn't, in my opinion, it doesn't deserve that because it handles a few moments in ways to where the player is like, oh, wow, I feel that. But it doesn't really go the distance. It just does something really different. And last thing I'll say, Girlfriend Reviews, they did articulate very well, but I'm getting really tired of games that are coming out that are just like, if you felt mad at this game, if you had a bad time playing this game, then congratulations, the game did its intended job, like Death Stranding or Last of Us 2 or to an extent Red Dead 2. I'm tired of games trying to teach me a lesson through just an unpleasant experience or poor writing or design. That is not a proper out. I'm sorry. And I, you know what, bravo, happy for you if you got it. You're just like, oh yeah, I see this here. I will not say that it did what it like. It fulfilled its purpose through when it just didn't because the writing was sloppy.
Right.
So that's all I'll say on that.
Well, to wrap up this discussion, I one thing that I do look forward to, and I do hope there is I hope there is a Last of Us Part 3 or you know the next chapter.
There will be.
Or whatever. I agree. I think there will be. I mean, with it just being such a big franchise. I mean, we got 4 with Nathan Drake, so I do think there will be more. But what I hope is that I hope this is the end of Ellie's story. Either we need to create the cure, and that justifies everything that's ever happened to Ellie, or we just never talk about Ellie again. and I just mean that. But one thing I do think this game showed is that we can totally move on from Joel and Ellie. We've had their experience, and it was moving and amazing. Just if this game was just Abby and Lev, it wouldn't be at Last of Us Part 1 levels of just an amazing story, but it would have been just as good or just, right under it, because that whole experience, again, if you boil it down, it's very similar to Joel and Ellie's story. But to me, like, who are the other survivors? Like, let's take another set of survivors surviving this apocalypse and just tell that story. Because I talked about this last podcast. I'm sorry, I keep cutting you off, Steven.
No, you're good. You're good.
There are so many little stories that are just in the game. Like, if you stop and read every note, the stories you can put together are really good. I talked about Boris the Bowman last podcast, a guy who protected his village from the clickers because he was an Olympic bowman. He had a daughter. His daughter got killed. He snapped and ended up turning into a clicker, right? It's such a good little story. That could have been a whole game. Like, that could have been its whole own thing. So I hope if they continue, it's new stuff. That's what I want to see.
And people say to me, they're just like, oh, the impact of Abby's story and the death scene wouldn't have been as impactful if it wasn't Joel and Ellie's story. Like, and obviously, anyone else other than Joel dying wouldn't have hit us as hard. But you have to remember, from the forward compatible review, how long did it take us to become completely emotionally invested and just destroyed by what happened in Last of Us 1? 60 seconds is how long it took for us to know that we were going to be emotionally distraught if anything happened to Sarah. And that is exactly what happened. Naughty Dog has shown that it could take them 60 seconds of on-screen interaction between a father and daughter, or a piece of paper with a story of lore for them to introduce characters. They can do this. They know they are masters of creating characters that feel authentic and dynamics between characters that feel relatable and for the most part heartfelt. And so, like, they could have made it work. They just felt like they had to do it because there was that expectation. And that's honestly one of this game's biggest weaknesses is expectation.
Yeah.
If it would just let go of that and tell those stories of survivors throughout the world, maybe sprinkle a cameo or two here and there, sure. But the best part of Last of Us for me, outside of just Joel and his story, his journey, is the world and the survivors throughout it. That is so rich. Like, come on, just use it.
Hey everybody, thanks for watching this episode of Chortle Cast. We do hope you enjoyed it. If you did, there's a couple things you can do to help us out. Number one, if you're watching on YouTube, you're already at chortlegames.com. If you like this video, share it with friends, all that good stuff. We also have the podcast on Facebook. That's at Chortle Games. But you can also watch us live stream normally on at Chortle Games on Twitter. And then twitch.tv/Chortle_games on Twitch if you want to watch us live stream. You can join our Discord. We hang out, talk about that talking in that all week long. So feel free to do that. You can get to that in the description of this video or podcast, however you're watching it. Before we go, again, housekeeping. Forward compatible, starting Watch Dogs. There's going to be a preview right after this episode where we talk about what we remember enjoying, hating, the whole 9 yards, kind of where we expect.
I'm really excited.
It's going to be a good one. It's going to be a really, really good one.
I'm really excited. Yeah.
That's going to be right after that. And then later tonight, so if you're watching this live on Monday, later tonight, Steven will actually be starting that playthrough. So be sure to stick around for that. And then last thing before we go, next week's podcast will be live on Sunday at 2. Well, we're probably going to go live
2
at
Central.
Like 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
1 o'clock. 1 o'clock Central Standard Time. Next Sunday, we're going to be doing a live podcast. We'll talk about the week's news, but then we'll also dive into Ubisoft's Forward.
This
and
is
do
the
a
most
live reaction.
This is the most E3 you're gonna get this year.
Unfortunately, yes, this is the most.
So yeah,
happen, so
be sure to make it if you can.
Yeah, it's gonna be good. So anyway, thank you guys for watching. See you next time.
Bye.